Message. If you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 7. Or we have Bibles in the back of that table over there if you don't have one of your own. If you don't have one of your own, and you can actually take that Bible back there home with you. So turn to Matthew chapter 7. And as we do that, has anyone ever told you guys something along the lines of, what's it called? You know what? I just forgot something. It's someone's birthday tomorrow. It's not mine. It's actually Jason's. Everyone look at Jason. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Just a couple things about Jason. Jason came on as a JHM volunteer in December, right? Yeah, December. And he's been stepping up in a lot of ways, just connecting with students and helping Josh out with tech team. And he's also done a tremendous job with leading you 8th graders in discussion groups. And I'm proud to call him friend and fellow leader. So how about we sing happy birthday to Jason, and then we can go on with our night. Sound good? Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jason. Jason, happy birthday to you. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So back to the message. Matthew 7. Has anyone ever told you, oh, you're not the judge of me? Or, that's not very Christian of you to judge me like that. It's easy to notice the flaws in other people while ignoring the flaws that we have in ourselves. But what if following Jesus sometimes involves judging? More on what I mean on that in a minute. So just keep that in your mind for a second. Because we live in a world today that says, if you disagree with me, then you must hate me. That is a cultural lie. You can disagree with someone and still love them at the same time. The problem that we often run into, though, is how we show the love that we're supposed to the people that we might disagree with. So tonight we're talking, if you haven't guessed already, about judgment and about the main question, is it right to judge others? So if there was any main point that I want you guys to remember from tonight, it's that love and judgment go hand in hand. That's very countercultural. It's very against what the world likes to say. But according to the Bible, this is truth. God's word is truth. And so before we get into the text, I want to give you some context, some who, what, when, where, why questions. Who? Jesus is the one speaking still, where he's doing his most popular sermon that we've been in for the past several weeks. Sermon on the Mount. It's in North Galilee. It's a part of Israel. It's in the Middle Eastern part of the world. And this happens, at 33-ish AD. And what this is about is Jesus is preaching against hypocrisy. And the why behind that is so that we don't become hypocritical. And if you don't know what hypocritical means, that's okay. I'll define that in a couple minutes. But he doesn't want to become prideful, and he wants us to approach other people with love when we need to either correct them or simply just care for them. And the how of that is that towards the end of this message, we're going to talk about how we can evaluate our hearts and love people first before casting judgment or correcting them or any of those things. So let's go ahead and get into the text, Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Here we go. Do not judge so that you won't be judged, for you will be judged by the same standard by which you judge others, and you'll be measured by the same measure that you use. So we'll stop there. Jesus is warning us against being hypocritical towards others because they will judge us in the same way that we judge them. Very clear, right? But I want to define some things for you guys a little bit, break it down. So if you guys don't know what hypocritical means, again, that's okay, I'm going to tell you. Hypocritical means basically you say one thing and then you turn around and go and do the complete opposite of what you told the other person. So a example of that would be, I say gossip is bad, but then I turn around and go gossip about someone. That's hypocritical, right? And then another example would say, you say passing notes to your crush at school is cringy, but then like you slide into people's DMs like almost every day. Like, what are you doing? And then so that's hypocrisy. And then to judge, there's kind of two different kinds of judging, but there's one kind of judging that Jesus is preaching against here, and that is that's when we condemn someone. We treat them differently because we don't accept them. That's kind of the harsh judgment that Jesus is warning us against. So an example of harsh judgment would be like, kind of going back to the gossip example. You gossip about this person and you judge them, you condemn them, you treat them differently because maybe they look differently than you. Maybe they wrestle or are living in like some sort of sexual sin, like maybe they identify as gay or as trans, or maybe they're just an awkward person, or maybe there's a struggle that they have that you're treating them differently because of. In the same way that we condemn other people, they will also condemn us back. Judge them for their appearance, judge them for their background, judge them for what kind of friends they have. They will judge you for the same things if you judge them in that way. But then also, they'll probably go above and beyond what you may judge them with. They'll pick out little things about you that really don't matter, but they'll really try and just get a reaction out of you based on how much you judge them. But let's continue in this passage, verses 3 and 4. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but don't notice the beam of wood in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the splinter out of your eye, and look, there's a whole beam of wood in your own eye? What? I don't want a log coming out of my eye. That's like a whole tree. It's not like a tiny baby Groot growing out of my eye. Like, Jesus is talking about a giant oak tree or sequoia tree that you'd see in Western U.S. The kind of judgment that Christians should be responsible for is judging what is right or what is wrong in a fellow believer, right? So I already said that harsh judgment and condemning other people, that's not what we should do as believers. But when we see a brother or sister, as Jesus calls the other person, a brother or a sister, when we see them doing something wrong, we don't just attack them. We do a little something called gentle correction. When we focus, though, on condemning people rather than loving them, we lose sight of God's grace. And there is a place for correcting other people, but love should always be the first priority. So this is especially true when it comes to loving on non-believers, right? So a little story for you guys. A couple years ago, me, Pastor Mariano, and a couple of other guys, we went as a part of Mariano's bachelor weekend, I guess, to St. Louis to evangelize to some people. And it's hard for me to tell this story because I was so dumb in this story, but the first person that I interacted with was this girl, like in her 20s, and I noticed that she had a tattoo of Jeremiah 29:11, I think on her arm. Great conversation starter, right? We're talking about it until she asked me to buy her beer. really weird. So instead of brushing it off and treating her with love and grace in that moment and trying to continue a godly conversation, I actually challenge her on that. And I say, oh, what did I say? If you say you're a Christian, then why are you asking me that? That's such a pointed question. I know some of you are giving me a look like, Aiden, why did you say that to her? I was like, not right. Now, instead of brushing it off, I just went at her. Not a good choice. And to clarify about the whole drinking thing, drinking itself is not a sin, being drunk is. But she was obviously just being herself, and I don't know her story, and maybe she didn't think it was wrong to ask that. But based on how I responded to her, she felt very condemned, felt very hurt, and her whole perspective of Christians in the church probably changed in that moment for the worse. I hope that it's changed since then. And I didn't know her story, but instead of leading with love, I cast a judgment. That's not what we should do. And the point behind me telling this kind of vulnerable story is I learned a valuable lesson that day. We should focus on loving others before we correct them. We need to focus on loving others before we correct them. Kind of like how we talk about belong, believe, become. Before anyone here can believe or become, they have to belong first. So, conviction, if you were to try to find an application for this story that I just told, it's this: conviction is God's job, not ours. I should have said something along the lines of, hey, that's a really cool tattoo. Like, how have you seen God unfold his plans in your life? How have you seen God work based on that verse that you have tattooed on your arm? Or I could have offered to share part of my story and how God has worked in my life. That would have shown so much more grace instead of casting judgment. People will often get a little defensive when you lead with correction before love. But when you open up with love and to actually develop a relationship with that person, you gradually get permission to get kind of vulnerable with them. And then to gently, I emphasize the gently call them out. And that, I don't say gently to say, hey, don't be clear or beat around the bush or any of those things. Be clear in what you want to correct them on, but be kind about it. But for non-believers, they're not going to understand Christian standards because they don't understand the gospel. So rather than talking to them about modifying their behavior, you actually want to focus on letting the gospel transform their heart. And we focus on that by sharing the gospel with them and also sharing parts of our story with them. Like, hey, how are you doing with your anxiety? Like, I know it's been a while since we last talked about it. How are you doing with that? And they respond, man, it's actually going really bad. Like, my hands shake sometimes. My mind just feels so like there's a million thoughts happening at the same time. And then you say something like, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Would you mind if I kind of shared my experience with that? I think it would be good news for you because God can work in your life the same way he did in mine. The main priority is to share the hope and love that Jesus offers. But what do we do when it comes to a fellow believer that needs correction, right? Because we're not perfect. we all mess up. And so how do we go about correcting or judging another believer in a godly, kind way? Well, I got three. I don't have them up on the screen here, but just listen to them. Number one is evaluate your heart. I want to read verse 5 and 6. Jesus says, hypocrite. Everyone say, hypocrite.
Hypocrite.
Good job. First, take the beam of wood out of your eye, and then you will see clearly so that you can take the splinter out of your brother's eye. Don't give what is holy to dogs or toss your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet, turn, and tear you to pieces. When we got to verse 6, you guys are probably like, what the heck does that mean? Don't worry, I will get to that in a second. I want to focus on verse 5 first, though. He says we need to evaluate our hearts first. We need to take the log of wood out of our own eye. So, some questions that I think, or not just what I think, but what the Bible suggests we should ask ourselves before we go to a brother or sister and gently correct them on something is, am I currently living out what I'm about to correct this person on? Or am I a hypocrite? Do I say one thing and then go do the complete opposite of what I tell others to do? And then another question is, am I trying to correct this person from a place of love and genuine care for them? Or am I trying to correct them out of pure frustration? Because when we do it out of frustration, it doesn't go as well. And so to kind of illustrate this, I need a guy student to volunteer for this example. Oh gosh, I almost hit the TV.
Come on, in.
Don't worry, you won't. I'll be lifting this. It's okay. How about Brock? Get on up here. Give it up for Brock, everyone. Okay, I'll go to this side, and then you go to that side of the stage. All right. So obviously I have a barbell, right? You might want to scooch that way more. You're okay. I should have. Well, maybe not to the edge. Otherwise, I'll knock you off. I'm not going to poke you with this. Don't worry. So obviously I have a barbell. If I pretend this is a log, the beam of wood that Jesus is talking about. So imagine that I had this giant tree, oh my goodness, in my eye, like this. Like, if I just let this thing go, it would just fall to the ground. And I can't even move. And Brock is like, bro, there's a splinter in my eye. Then I'm just going to, knock him away with my giant wooden beam. No, I'm not going to hit you. Yeah. And so if I have this giant thing in my eye, and I'm like, hey, come here, Brock, I'm going to take that splinter out of your eye. Not going to happen. Okay? I need to be able to see clearly and actually be able to move if I were to help him with something. But first I got to help myself and evaluate my heart. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, cool. Thank you, Brock. Sure, that'd be great. All right, let's give Brock a big hand. Thank you. Thank you. So, back to the tips about correcting a fellow believer. Number 2, so the first one was evaluate your heart. Number 2, approach the person with love. Approach them with love. So I already kind of talked about, we need to be clear, don't beat around the bush about what you want to talk about with them. And I'll be honest, it may sting them a little bit when you give that little correction, but ultimately, it's going to keep them from even doing more wrong things. And if they are truly seeking Christ, then they will receive it well. So, and then another thing I would say is establish why you're correcting them. I already talked about, are you doing it from frustration or out of love? Tell the person that you love them and that you care for them. And that part of why you want to give this godly judgment for them is so that they don't ruin their witness for others and are able to represent Jesus well to their community. So, for how to do that, maybe let's go back to gossip, because I think that's just a huge thing in middle school in general. And I'm not saying like, you guys are gossiping, right? Okay, but anyway. Sorry, go a little bit. Okay. So rather than going up to someone saying like, bro, you're stupid. You gotta stop gossiping. Now, yes, that gets the message across. That's a person can not take that very well because that's kind of mean, right? Instead, just be like, you come from a place of humility. Just be like, hey man, I know that we like to joke around, and I'm working on this too. But maybe we shouldn't tear other people down while they're not around us, right? Just say something like, man, I'm preaching to myself right here as I tell you this, or this is something that I struggle with too, but I don't want you to struggle with it as well. That way, instead of coming from a place of authority, you're coming from a place of influence for them. You're going on the same level as them, and you're meeting them in their brokenness with God's truth. And then number 3 tip about how to correct your brother or sister is don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. So now we're at verse 6. I'll explain what Jesus means because you're probably like, where are these dogs, bro? Where are these pigs? Why would I throw pearls at pigs? Like, that's kind of mean. They'll probably get them all muddy. Well, Jesus is using a word picture for people who refuse correction repeatedly and aggressively. So the dogs and pigs that Jesus mentions are people who refuse correction. Like they are the ones who are putting themselves kind of down to that level of a dog or a pig and just being stubborn and not receiving correction well. And then the sacred things and pearls that he mentions is love and correction. So he's saying people who refuse correction just over and over and over again, don't seem like they want to change, they don't need to be corrected more. They don't need to be overcorrected. What they probably need more is for you to show genuine love and care for them. And then the work of the Holy Spirit kicks in and convicts them in their heart as they wrestle with that sort of guilt or regret over their sin that they have. And then finally, maybe, after wrestling with that conviction a little bit and remembering your corrections to them and also how much you love them and care for them, despite your disagreement, they'll listen to you and they'll change. So, in review, stay with me guys, we're almost done. In review of everything we talked about, we need to put love over judgment. But when it comes to our brothers and sisters, we need godly judgment so that we can lovingly correct them. So I want to give you guys a gospel truth that I hope encourages you, and it's this: in Christ, I can love through godly judgment. Through the power of Jesus, you can love through godly judgment. With non-believers, you can show care for them, and hopefully it changes them to accept Jesus as you share the gospel with them. And then for non-believers who already know Christian standards and they know the power of the gospel, you could be a little bit more clear with them and say, hey, I love you, but you can't do this. So remember, main point, love and judgment go hand in hand. They work together. So ultimately, question for tonight, is it right to judge others? Yes, because judging with compassion, I emphasize the compassion, judging with compassion is not hate, it's hope.